Good afternoon and welcome to our informational for August 27th, 2007. First of all, we'll have our weekly staff report from Deborah Owen.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just a brief reminder that we're going to go live with the Granicus program on September 4th. I've been working on a video, an instructional video that we'll show you at that time that'll kind of walk through how to utilize the program, and just looking forward to using this program for the public, for web streaming. Thank you.
Mayor Munson, do you have any things?
I don't. We covered our areas, so.
Okay, Audit Committee, Councilor Kavanaugh, anything new to report? No report. Okay. Fiscal Committee, Councilor Costello.
No report.
Okay. Land Use Committee, Councilor Jameson is not here, and so would anyone else from the Land Use Committee like to add anything?
We did not have a meeting, so no report.
All right, this is a be sweet and short here today. Public Services Committee, Councilor Staggers, I know that you are still chairing our Public Services Committee, at least on the campaign finance topic. So would you like to share some information with us?
Okay. The first thing I'd like to do is to talk about an area that we've received consensus on the committee, and that's in regard to reporting dates. What we're trying to do is to make this as simple as possible, and so I'm going to go through this very briefly, and if any other members of the committee have any comments, please interject those. Let's suppose that you're going to be running next April of 2008 for the City Council. In fact, we are going to have 4 seats that are up for election. According to what we've come up with, we've decided that the first report that would be due, if you're going to be running in the April 2008 election, will be due on December 31st, 2007. Now, a report will be due if you have engaged in any money activity. If you have been out raising money or spending money, then on December 31st of this year, you should report that. The next report would be the last day in January, the last day in February, the last day in March, and then also you should have another report due by noon Friday before the election. Now, after the election is over with, you are to have a wrap-up report by the end of 60 days. For those individuals elected to office, then they would also be required to file annual reports of any activity that would take place. So that's the one area that we have a lot of consensus on. Now, if we pass this in the next month or so, I think all of us should be aware then that we will have an annual report due at the end of this year, December 31st, 2007. Everybody on the council. Now, does anybody have any questions about that? Okay.
Councilor Brown?
I believe, Councilor Staggers, currently it requires, and I forget what it's called, a notice or intent to run. Does this get rid of that, or how does that work?
Well, what we were thinking is if you begin raising or spending money, that's in effect when you're giving your notice. And so if you're going to be doing that this year, then you're going to have a report on December 31st, 2007. Yeah.
Councilor Kavanaugh?
How do what you just laid out, how does it change from existing ordinance?
Oh, right now, if you somehow indicate that you're running for office by receiving a donation from somebody or mentioning something to an Argus reporter or media reporter, then you got to start filing right away. So if you would say something today, then you got to have a report filed by the end of this month, September, October, November, December. So hopefully this is going to simplify the process a lot. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we have total disclosure on this.
And what has the committee done with regard to reporting requirements? I know you say you're talking about various deadlines.
Yes.
But what does the content of the report say? Have you delved into that yet?
Well, we're letting Deb take care of a lot of the forms. And she's going to be trying to simplify these to make it real easy. Deb, do you want to say a little bit more about what you're thinking about doing there?
Well, I'm just going to touch base on the annual report for those who are incumbents. We thought we'd give an alternate. If you have if activity occurs in your election campaign, whether it's re-election or whatever, you'd report that in a sum amount similar to the reports you would use. But if there is no activity, we would offer an alternative where you could just simply sign via form letter. You could just sign your name and just verify there was no activity. I just wanted to clear up that. As far as, I think there was some issues, Kermit, that the committee was going to bring to discuss about contribution limits and things like that. As far as the forms, we're actually going to begin work on those tomorrow to make those somewhat simpler. But there has been no major change as far as contribution limits and whatnot at this time.
Yeah, I'm going to say something about that in just a few minutes, too. So.
Sorry.
Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, that was the area we had consensus on in the committee, so we all agreed on that. Now, the issue was also brought up, what if some people are not filing these reports like they should be? Is there going to be some kind of punishment? Well, part of the committee believed that there should be some punishment, maybe $50 a day, imitating state law, or possibly even $100 a day. Then there was also another position that we should just simply allow social and political sanctions take hold here instead of having a formal punishment. So the idea is that if somebody is running for political office and they don't file these reports politically and socially, this would be very damaging to them in the future. Dee, did you have any comments? Because you were an advocate of the $50 or $100 a day.
I happen to feel personally that I would like to see tougher penalties for people who do not file reports. I believe that if people are going to step forward and run for office, they have an obligation, an absolute obligation, to complete the forms in a timely manner that we agree on. And from the beginning, I always felt that the legislative approach last year, the bill that they passed for $50 a day was too little, in my opinion. And I was looking at an editorial in our local paper on August 8th, and again, even though the South Dakota legislature passed the $50 penalty last year, as you all know, frankly, 8% of those required to meet the deadline, even with this new penalty, missed it. And that's down some from before. But I am for real penalties, and I think fines are effective.
Kevin.
Excuse me. I was just going to mention that I think we should seriously consider whether or not we have financial penalties for non-compliance with the reporting. It seems to me that the record at the state level of not having some type of financial penalty is pretty abysmal, and I'm not sure what the outcome has been before versus after, but I know it's improved. So I think that's something that this council should give serious consideration to.
Does anybody else have any other comments? Okay, then another issue where we did not have any consensus is in regard to contributions from PACs and individuals, whether those contributions should be limited. There are 2 points of view on this. One point of view is that individuals and PACs should be limited to $1,000, with an exception being for the candidate and his family or her family being unlimited. And Dee, if you want to say something about that position.
Well, originally, during this discussion in the Public Services Committee regarding PACs is, in a perfect world, I'd personally prefer that we not accept PAC money at all at the city level, but I guess that's legally not possible. So anyway, I, and I will say other city councilors too, and I on the committee believe that that we should limit PAC money as much as possible, frankly, in city elections. And I realize that, state elections and federal elections will continue to take thousands of dollars of PAC money, but city level, we'd like to, if Susie can only give me $1,000 or any other candidate $1,000 for a city council race, I really do not feel that other contributors should be able to get around that ruling by giving me lots more PAC money. And even in our last city council election, there were several of us who received PAC money over the individual limits, including myself. And I think that gets around the spirit of what election campaign finance is all about.
Okay, the other position on the committee is that there should be no limitations on giving, either by individuals or by PACs. But at the same time, there would have to be full disclosure of all the money that was received. Now, the argument for no limitations, part of my argument comes from this book entitled Monopoly Politics by James C. Miller III, published by the Hoover Institute. And this book, Monopoly Politics, talks about trying to create competition within the political realm. I think most of us accept the idea that it's good to have competition in the economic realm, and that sometimes when we have, price fixing or we have monopolies in the economic realm, many times that is not good. And this author is arguing also that in the political realm, if you have too many restrictions, this is not good for the political process. The author wants to have competition. The author contends that many restrictions tend to help the incumbent in a contest because, well, first of all, an incumbent inherently is going to most likely raise more money than the challenger. Challengers, to be effective, usually have to raise a lot of money to take on an incumbent. And a lot of restrictions are going to be hurting the challenger a lot more than the incumbent. Also, another argument about having no restrictions is that when you have restrictions on the amount of money given, it tends to favor wealthy candidates. Now, how's that the case? Well, let's take a look at an example. Let's suppose that you have a middle-class candidate running for office, and you also have a very wealthy candidate running for office. Now, let's suppose that the middle-class candidate follows all the rules and regulations and is able to raise $50,000. The wealthy candidate also follows all the rules and regulations but only raises $40,000. Well, the wealthy candidate really wants to win. And so the wealthy candidate and his family kick in another $100,000, bringing up the total to $140,000 for the wealthy candidate. However, the middle-class candidate cannot do this at all. And so the middle-class candidate, because of restrictions, has no opportunity to go out there and try to raise more money to counter the $140,000 that the wealthy candidate has for his campaign. So these are two reasons why I don't think we should have money restrictions, because these tend to help the incumbent, and they also tend to favor wealthy candidates.
Councilor Kavanaugh?
I'm just curious about, I know there was no consensus, and I believe it was correctly stated that we probably couldn't legally do this anyway, but I'm just curious why, Councilor Knudsen, what is your concern about PAC money?
I believe that PAC money oftentimes is used to get around the spirit of campaign election laws.
In what way?
Well, and I included myself in the last city council election. I myself accepted PAC money from a friend, a very good friend. He does not even live in Sioux Falls. But, it's not a stranger, a very good friend who supports my hard work. But so by using a PAC, he was able, in this case, to give me $2,000, when in fact, any citizen in Sioux Falls would have only been allowed, as much of a fan of mine as they might have been, they could have only given me $1,000. And I just, I don't think that's a level playing field. But I realize that PACs are reality and they are here to stay. And I also realize that you can drop another PAC within, 10 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever, as long as you have a piece of paper right there. So, I realize that it's a difficult issue. But there are other counselors on the Public Services Committee that feel the same way as I do on this.
Does anybody else have any other questions of what we've been doing on the committee so far? We've had extensive discussions on all these issues that we've been talking about this afternoon, and so what we wanted to do was to also get your input too. So,
and on that last issue that Councilor Stagers reported, I think it would be helpful for us as a committee to just get a little feedback from the rest of you as far as I know we haven't presented you an ordinance to vote on yet, so you can change your mind as many times as you wish, but just a little input on, would you prefer to take all the caps off as far as limits in the city council and mayor races going forward, or would you like to stay with the limits that are on the books right now and that are used at the legislative, at the state and the federal level? So would you have any thoughts on that, Councilor Kavanaugh, or any other councilors?
Well, I could offer a couple ideas. First of all, I would like to see from the committee, I appreciate you bringing forward your report. If there's to be an ordinance that would change or update our campaign finance law, I'd like to see a draft of it. So whenever that's ready, we'd appreciate it. As far as caps, I could be persuaded either way. I think the most important thing in my mind and what I'm going to look for in this ordinance is transparency. I want to make sure that if it's $1 or $10,000, that it's reported, and it's reported in a timely fashion, and that it is clearly identified where it came from and what it was spent on.
Thank you, Councilor Kavanaugh, and I believe everyone on the committee feels very strongly the same way as you do on that. And it was just a couple of these areas that he has, I think, done a very nice job. Councilor Stagers has done a very nice job today just reviewing, because we've spent so many hours, but instead of having like 4 ordinances drawn up, we just wanted to get a little consensus from you. And Councilor Costello, you're on the committee, but would you go ahead with any thoughts or additions?
I think when you said earlier, Kermit, fostering competition, clearly that's what we all want. We all want to have competitive races and a lot of people seeking office and telling their story on why they should be the best person. It seems like the crux of the situation is to how best foster that competitiveness. And, your example that you gave certainly is a valid point, in a scenario could exist in a Sioux Falls election that may play out. But another scenario could exist that it might just be the opposite. And the fact is, we're never going to, either way we go on this, with the limitations or unlimited, there's going to be a scenario at some point in time that's not going to work for us. But I guess at this point, I think the probably most important thing is that we're consistent. If we're going to have limitations on PACs, we need to have limitations on individuals and keep them the same. So if it's $1,000 for PACs, $1,000 for individuals. If we're not going to limit one, then we shouldn't limit the other. My 2 cents.
Councilor Litz?
I appreciate the work that you folks have done. I know you've gone round and round on a lot of this here, but I got to say, when I ran for city council, I was surprised to find these layers a little bit more confusing and a lot more complex than the state, running for the state. I didn't see why, if I'm running for a city election, it should be any more complex than a state election. I agree with Councilor Kavanaugh. As long as you report where you got the money and how much it is, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's all fair game. It may be a flawed system, but it's the best one we've got. It seems to work pretty good. Money in politics is the American way, whether you like it or not. I read something here a while back about the last presidential election, the billions of dollars we spent on it, and how some people said we could have been feeding the poor, do this or that. And then somebody else pointed out to me that we spend that much money on potato chips every month in the United States. That kind of put it into a perspective. So I guess I like, the PAC money is just an individual, or it's a collective point of view. Shouldn't have any more sway on you than if your friend gave you $1,000. I just don't, I would agree that we should be at the state level in the very least. And I just didn't think that the city of Sioux Falls should be any more restrictive. I didn't see the point of it.
Councilor Brown?
How close is the committee to bringing forth an ordinance of some sort?
Well, we're going to be having a meeting September 4th, and we want to get this done as soon as possible. It would be nice to have something within 2 weeks.
And Mayor, if you have anything you'd like to add to this discussion, obviously you're very welcome to do so also. Any other thoughts from anyone for the chairperson? Okay.
Fine.
Thank you very much, Councilor Stagers, for chairing us on this topic too. We have had lots of really good discussions, and we've had some, visitors, regular visitors to our group, and we've appreciated that input. And again, so our next meeting is September 4th. That's Tuesday after Labor Day at 3 p.m.
Okay.
Or
Did we have it scheduled for the 10th?
Okay. Oh, and your email to me today, I thought it had changed because you said September 4th to me in that email. So That's where I was confused. Okay, so September 10th. I thought that had changed. Sorry. At 3 p.m. For the citizens who are watching. We're looking for input on this issue from all of you. Okay. Staff report, before Gene Rodenhorst, our Director of Finance, comes forward to give our monthly staff report, just a reminder to all of the team that budget amendments are due at 5 p.m. on tomorrow, Tuesday, August 18th. So if you don't have all those in yet, would you please adhere to that schedule? And Gene Rodenhorst, please. Oh, excuse me, Councilor Brown.
I just also wanted to bring up for Public Services Committee on the 10th, we'll meet for our first regular session right after the informational at 5 o'clock. We'll have 3 issues. We'll talk about the water conservation, ongoing rebate on sprinkler timers, and we'll also have a representative here from Sanford Health to talk about gifting of the 35 acres of land to the City of Sioux Falls. So we're going to add that to the agenda.
Thank you very much. I apologize for missing you in the lineup.
Gene Rodenhorst, Director of Finance. This will be a relatively short report, I think, unless you have a lot of questions, but actually things are moving along pretty much as planned, and frankly, there's just not a lot to report at this point. The letter this month pays particular attention to the new page that we put into the report. That is the enterprise fund summary of cash flows. The enterprise funds there's 5 of them that are operated like businesses essentially. And the key to the enterprise funds is cash. Cash is king. As long as there's cash there, we're doing okay, and if there's not cash there, we're not doing so good. These are not appropriated funds. The council only approves these funds through a resolution, but there are no appropriations related to it. This page, we hope going forward, will be of use to you in monitoring a little more closely and understanding a little bit more about the business there. It's a mini financial statement, if you will, of the funds. It's broken down into sections. We have the cash flows from operating activity, and as you'll note in all of our enterprise funds, operating-wise, we do fine. We generate adequate money to actually a good positive cash flow out of the operations itself. And operations, it remains there is just as simple a business, for instance, of selling water and the cost of generating or obtaining water, and the difference is cash flow from operations. The other thing that is a big impact to cash flows is the cash flows from transfers, capital, and related financing activities. This is primarily impacted by capital and financing activities. It's a major reason that the budget this year looks like it's up by a huge amount, but in fact, the budget is not up by a huge amount. You do have to appropriate capital, and in this particular one, Lewis and Clark and the quality of life bonds show up in here in big numbers. And this is where we will have cash that is used. And if you look at the water reclamation fund, lower right-hand corner, it shows that we've had a net decrease in cash of $193,000 in that fund. And also, if you look on page 1, where the cash investment statement is, you'll see that we have a negative balance in the railroad relocation fund of $206,000. These funds will run negative activities, negative cash flows, primarily because we are funding them through state money, SRF loans. And those SRF funds come in after the fact. That is, we have to build whatever we're building on a monthly basis. We send a report to them, and when it's built, we send them a bill for it. But in the meantime, we have to put the cash out to pay the contractors, and then we have to wait until that SRF money comes back. And so you're going to see funds like that showing a negative cash flow on a relatively regular basis. And then the other activities that show up in here is the cash flows from investing activities, which is simply the money that's allocated to these funds coming out of our pooled investment account. And then the cash balances and the breakdowns in there of any increases or decreases. The cash balance also shows dedicated funds, and there's a lot of money tied up. For instance, we have to have 1 year's debt service at the trustee for most of the loans, and so that's tied up as dedicated cash. The landfill, we have a fund there that we have to maintain. That we cannot take the money out of that fund without permission from the State Department of Natural Resources. It can only be used for landfill closings and maintenance issues. So hopefully, like I say, it shows you a little better picture of what's going on. As far as the other big things that went on this month, our sales tax came in at 5.2% in the capital improvement fund. That's still not up to our 7% that we've got in the budget for 06 or 07. But we will know a lot more at the end of August. It seems like we can look at the end of August and take a pretty good forecast from by the end of August, the closing of that month, as to what we will have for the year. And we'll know a lot in a couple of days here, because we will have the July, the last check-in, which we don't have yet. And we tried to check with the state this morning, and they don't. There's no number available, but we should have. We've only got our first check, so there should be a pretty good sized one coming here shortly. With that, are there any other questions we might?
Councilor Litz?
Gene, I did have something. On page 16, I was kind of looking over the total debt outstanding or authorized, and under our capital leases there, it says obligations under capital lease, the health department building. And I was looking at, the amount isn't that much, but I was looking, there's an outstanding interest rate that sticks out there at 8.49%, and most of them, 5 is the top. If they're between 2.5 and 3, and I was just curious, is that a construction loan, or is
No. That is the current health building contract that's in place. And that was the rate that was agreed to at the time that contract went in. It's got about another, 4 or 5 years to run, and then we make a one-time payment. And we'll be out of that one. But considering we should be paying tax-exempt rates, it's pretty high, but there's no way for us to get out of it. We've looked at that at length to get out of the transaction, and we can't do it.
Just curious. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Our next staff report today is on the vegetation ordinance and Project Trim by Don Kearney, and Director of Parks and Recreation, and Dwayne Stahl, our Park Forestry Supervisor. And thank you both for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. I would, with the special assessment hearing coming up in a couple weeks, I thought it would be a good opportunity to review the forestry program with you. And hopefully we'll have some visual aids here. The handout that Don gave you is what I'd like to have on the overhead screen. Where I'd want to start is just to give you our mission statement of the forestry program, and that is to establish and maintain a safe and sustainable tree resource in the park system and oversee city ordinances that apply to vegetation. I have a graph on the second page under vegetation ordinance update, and I've broken this out into two categories: weeds and low-hanging branches over streets and sidewalks or trees. The first graph that I have shows in increments of 2 years since 2001 to 2007 an increase from just under 600 weed complaints up to over 1,000 weed complaints projected for this year. The 2007 graph that you have does show a projection there. However, currently we're at over 1,000 weed complaints right now, which is where we ended up last year. I want to review, remember that the weed ordinance is initiated by a complaint basis, meaning we don't drive around and look for unkept lawns. So the process is we receive a complaint, we go out and we verify that complaint. And if it's a valid complaint, we generate a letter asking that property owner to take care of the problem. We give them approximately 7 days to do that. We come back. If it's not taken care of, we send it to the code enforcement officer, who then will go out and either issue a citation or work with that property owner. Sometimes there's some issues that he can help resolve. If he issues a citation, he notifies us, and then we send out a contractor to mow the property. The contractor, in turn, sends us an invoice for that service, and we charge that property owner for that service rendered. And there's the graph there. The next slide are some changes and improvements that we are constantly trying to strive to make this process easier, streamlined, assist in every way that we can. One of the changes that we've implemented is the IT department asked us to use a tracking system called Naviline. It's a reporting system that in the past I used a database at our office, and that database was basically at our office, so it wasn't shared with the other departments to see what some properties were doing, especially the attorney's office. It's very important that they know all the complaints that there are on a property. This, the advantage of this system is we can report, or we can track repeat offenders. And in our process, if you remember, we send out one letter a year. We start the season with a public notice that the property owners are responsible for maintaining their properties, and it's spelled out the noxious weeds and the height limit of 8 inches. We send out one letter a year. So when we enter a new complaint, it'll pop up, this property had a complaint on it earlier in the year. We don't send out another letter. That property owner's been notified once this year. It's a courtesy letter. We're not required to do this by ordinance, but we send that letter out originally. We immediately we verify it. We send it to the code enforcement officer. The code enforcement officer again verifies or can issue another citation. notifies us, we send a contractor out, and that property's mowed. The same process as before. This system also allows us to store the pictures that we take before mowing pictures. The pictures that I present at the night of the special assessment hearing, this is what the property looked like before we mowed it. That's stored there. And it also inserts, the tech staff had to look up the properties on the county records. This takes it already in the system and imports that to the letter so they don't have to look up those addresses. Another improvement that we are doing with native plantings, we're having a higher request for properties to be exempt from the height limitation. A portion of the property wants to be put into like a native planting. Some of the advantage of this is water conservation, less time maintaining that property. Process now is the request is given to the director, and the director either approves it or denies the request. And that, depending on the ruling, that property owner can either have that vegetation exceed 8 inches in height, or it has to be kept below 8 inches. Now, all along the noxious weed, the state law has to be adhered to. All noxious weeds would have to be controlled in a situation like that. The next slide is the second part of the vegetation ordinance deals with trees. And I've started with Project Trim, which is a proactive approach to low-hanging branches over streets and sidewalks. This is a map of the Project Trim area. The areas in green will be completed by this year. The area in orange is scheduled for 2008, and the area in blue is scheduled for 2009. This is a third year in a 5-year cyclic program, and it's a cyclic program meaning once we go through one rotation doesn't mean we stop. I foresee that this program will continue on. To date, at the end of the year, we will have inspected 27,600 properties, sent out 6,500 notice letters sent to date, 197 properties trimmed, and if you take the number of properties trimmed and the notices that were sent out, we're running right around a 97% compliance rate. I would like to take the opportunity and publicly thank the citizens for cooperating in this program. There's the property owners that have been trimming, and they need to be recognized. Property owners that have received the notice and realize what their responsibilities are, have taken that on and have complied. I really appreciate all the hard work that they're doing. The next slide, the other part of the tree ordinance is the complaint process, and I think this is a very encouraging graph here. This is a graph of all the total complaints by year. And in 2004, prior to Project Trim, we had over 300 complaints of low-hanging branches over streets and sidewalks. 2005 was the first year of this program, and the complaints dropped. 2006, they dropped even further. Right now, we're running about what we did in 2006. But I can tell you, I know where a lot of these complaints are coming from, and they're in areas that we haven't been yet. So I think it's very encouraging. I don't think we'll ever come to a point where we don't have any complaints. Trees grow, and sometimes they grow very fast. So if somebody complains, it has to be applied to the ordinance. Some of the changes that we have done in the tree ordinance is when we do an inspection after the letter. In the past, we have used the equipment kind of as a gauge on how high the branches are. Our high ranger, for instance, the boom is 11 feet 6 inches, and sometimes that wasn't always obvious in the pictures that I presented. So we've improved our program by using a surveying measuring rod that's calibrated to our different heights, and that is in our pictures that we are taking now. You can't read the numbers because you're not looking through a transit, but the different heights are noted by red large red bands on the measuring rod. And if the crowns are conducive enough to see that, you'll see those in the pictures. Public education is a very important part of this program. With Project TRIM, now, although we didn't start with public meetings, every area that we go into, we have a public meeting. After everybody's received their letter, we invite them in. We haven't had a big success or turnout for these public meetings. I would like to sit and discuss the program to a room full of people, then individually tell them over the phone everything that I just repeated to the phone call before. But some very good points, and I think some of the questions are common throughout the community, and we're taking those comments and we're trying to incorporate them to improve the program. And one comment was, this last meeting was, it would be nice if the area that was coming up had some advance notice. And Don mentioned this in the budget address, that by doing this, the possibility, hopefully, some of these trees would be trimmed and we wouldn't have as many letters going out, which would be another success. So one way we're going to try to do that is future water billing notices. They're going out anyway, and there's other departments put inserts in there, so we're going to do that, try to give people some heads up of when we're coming there. Lawn and Garden Show is an example of public information education. I set a booth up there and able to talk with the public one-on-one about the project. The theme is Project TRIM the last couple of years, and I see that that's going to continue. And there again, it's another way to get the information out and the understanding of what we're trying to do and how they can accomplish it. With that, I'll leave it on the screen above a before and after picture of what Project TRIM can do in our community to make our trees overall a healthier environment. Trees can coexist with streets and sidewalks. It just takes trimming and diligence and maintenance. If there are any questions, I'll entertain them now.
Councilor Staggers?
Yes, Dwayne, you mentioned getting the private citizenry in compliance here, but from time to time the city has some noxious weeds and trees that are too low, the branches, and can you describe the process, how that's dealt with?
Well, with the low-hanging branches, with Project TRIM, and it's given my crew the ability to focus on their jobs too. They were kind of pulled around, crisis management, trying to do this over here, and it's given them some focus that when we're going around in these areas, we're also making sure all the parks are in compliance. Trees grow on parkland too, and we can't be everywhere at once, but we try to keep them up. If there's a complaint, we address it. But we are addressing those situations as we go through all these different Project TRIM areas. The noxious weeds, we do have a quite extensive spray program. We not only have our parkland, but we have the drainages and all the right-of-ways that we do a lot of our spraying in the fall, which is one of the better times to control weeds. We also spray in the spring. We do mow those down, which is in compliance with state law when we can't spray.
Yeah, the other day I saw a slough just east of Spencer Boulevard. I didn't even know this thing was back there. It was, to be maintained by the city, and there was a lot of growth back there. How does city ordinances deal with that? I mean, when you talk about your lawn, you can only have so many, 7 inches or whatever it is. But back there, that was just growing and growing and growing within the city limits.
There's exemptions to the ordinance. Native areas, agricultural properties, gardens, ornamental plantings, things like that are exempt. Drainages, cattails, obviously, those are things that we want there. Tall grass and drainages helps slow down flows of water. So those are all engineered and designed in those types of drainages.
Also, I have a question. How many staff members are involved in this Project TRIM, and how much money are we paying a year for this project?
I have 2 crews, 2 3-man crews. I have one dedicated to the park system, so that they can address the park issues. And I have one dedicated to non-park property, which is not just street property. It's the Carnegie, it's the City Hall, it's the downtown trees. That's how I have it broken out. The exact amount, I would have to get that to you later. I don't have that on off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilor Litz?
Yeah, I think this is a good program, and it keeps things looking good. But I do have a question about when you hire a contractor, an outside contractor, are there any parameters as to the value of the job they do as per acre or per lawn? And I know it's tenuous because you could have the bottom land real thick and the top of a hill not so much. But when somebody sends you a bill, you hire a contractor, say go do this, he sends you a bill. Do you have some guidelines that they have to be within? I know the sidewalks you guys do a competitive bid on, but that's a lot easier because they can be done at any time.
Yeah, this is a competitive bid too. That's a good question. We put this out for public bid. I have it broken out into two categories: developed properties and undeveloped properties. Because obviously, the equipment's going to require different types of equipment for different types of situations. It is a competitive bid. We did award it to the lowest bidders, and it's on an hourly rate. So when they go to a property, they track their time and they submit their time and bill on an hourly rate.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Dee?
I'm sorry, Councilor Stagers?
When it comes to the trimming of the trees, the city does that if somebody's not in compliance, right? We do
Correct.
all the trimming?
Yes, we do.
How come we don't put that out to competitive bidding?
Oh, we could. We could. We don't have it in my budget, but that would be a possibility.
So I think we're charging $150 per hour. We might be able to get it down quite a bit.
That's what the competitive nature of that would be. I don't know what it would be.
Yeah.
Councilor Kavanaugh?
Just to comment, Dwayne, I know a lot of times people look at programs like this and they think, geez, what value does this hold? I'll just tell you a story. A couple of weeks ago, I attended a meeting of the Whittier area. As you know, they've been quite busy this spring with their neighborhood cleanup. Well, they're continuing on with keeping their neighborhood clean. And they've submitted, and I'm sure you're aware of this, some 150 complaints to the city for various ordinance violations, some of which are the vegetation ordinance. So I know of one group of citizens in an important core neighborhood in our community that think this is quite a program, so they appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilor Brown?
That can be echoed in the mayor's conservation area, too. I worked with neighbors in that area last year who thought they needed more lights in their neighborhood until we found out it was the trees blocking the light. So in many respects, that helps save some money as well. So the program is working well, Dwayne.
Thank you.
Dwayne, or Councilor Litz, excuse me.
I'd like to also point out that a lot of times trimming a tree is good for the tree's health, and weeding of smaller trees out from underneath that improves the overall state of the vegetation.
Thank you, Dwayne, for the update, and thank you for the work you do for all of us.
Thank you.
I guess under open discussion here, I wanted to just tell you that I learned today that the Sioux Falls Tomorrow group is going to get started again, resume meetings in mid-September, and they have asked Councilor Litz and me to do a little presentation at their September 18th meeting on just a long-range vision of public facilities for our city, and I always like you all to know kind of what we're up to in the roles as your official leaders here. And then at our next informational, which you all know will be on Tuesday after Labor Day instead of the traditional Monday, during that informational, Councilor Stagers has asked a person in the sanitary service business to speak for a few minutes to us. And so I just want you to, it's on the recycling topic. I want you to just be thinking a little bit more about recycling, and I do like to on a request by all of the councilors when they have someone who wants to speak to us for a few moments. And what about other open discussion items from any of you? Councilor Costello?
Was that the 4th or the 10th?
That's on the That's on the 4th. I might have told you earlier the 10th. I meant the 4th. Any other open discussion topics by anyone here? Thank you all for being with us today, and the meeting is adjourned. Would you,